Hello everyone. Welcome to all of you in FFB Life Chemistry class. आज की क्लास में हम इन्वायरमेंटल केमिस्ट्री में ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग, डिप्लेशन इन ओजोन लेयर एंड ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री पे डिस्कस करेंगे। तो आज का टॉपिक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग है, पूरे क्लास का सारी चीज़ें बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट हैं और इन सबको कम से कम साइंस स्टूडेंट को, बाकी जनरली भी सबको जानना ज़रूरी है। तो दिस इज़ इम्पोर्टेंट चैप्टर एंड इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक ऑफ द चैप्टर। तो जैसा कि बताया, आज का जो टॉपिक है वो सबसे पहले हम बात करेंगे ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट की, जिसके बारे में हम पिछले वीडियो में भी थोड़ा बहुत शॉर्ट में बताते रहे हैं। ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट, ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस, उसके बाद हम ओजोन लेयर, डिप्लेशन इन ओजोन लेयर, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग, ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री, इस पे भी डिस्कस करेंगे। The name of the chapter is Environmental Chemistry and topic of this class is greenhouse effect. First we discuss on greenhouse effect and after this we discuss about global warming. ज़्यादा बड़ा हो जाता है या फिर छोटा हो जाता है? चलो। The greenhouse effect received its name because the Earth's atmosphere acts much like the glass or plastic roof and walls of a greenhouse. Sunlight enters a greenhouse through the transparent glass or plastic and heat the plants, but the heat emitted by the plants in the form of infrared radiation cannot pass through the glass or plastic roof and walls. As a result, the temperature inside the house increases. An effect similar to greenhouse is responsible for keeping the Earth's surface warmer than it would otherwise be. Atmosphere around the Earth act like a glass of greenhouse chamber. The gases present in atmosphere which are responsible for greenhouse effect are called greenhouse gases. The various gases which bring greenhouse effect are carbon dioxide, water vapors, oxides of nitrogen, methane, ozone, chlorofluorocarbons, etc. Although carbon dioxide only a trace gas in Earth's atmosphere with a concentration of 0.33% by volume, it plays a critical role in controlling the climate of the Earth. Without greenhouse effect, the average surface temperature of the Earth would be about 35 degrees centigrade, lower than it is today. The major source of the Earth's energy is the sun. About half of the radiant energy that strikes our atmosphere is either reflected or absorbed by molecules that make up this envelope of the air. The sunlight that reaches the Earth's atmosphere is in the ultraviolet, visible, and infrared regions between 100 and 5000 nm. However, ultraviolet radiations of shorter wavelengths are prevented from entering the troposphere by the presence of oxygen and ozone layer in the stratosphere. The rays that do reach the surface of the earth are largely in the visible and infrared region. This is the uh, diagrammatic representation. इनकमिंग सनलाइट, इस तरह से सनलाइट से ये रेज सरफेस ऑफ अर्थ पे यहाँ पे पड़ती है और इन्हें इस तरह से कुछ रिफ्लेक्ट हो जाती हैं, लेकिन बाकी बीच में प्रेजेंस ऑफ कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड मॉलिक्यूल जो इन्हें एब्जॉर्ब कर लेता है और कुछ को वापस सरफेस पे भेज देता है। तो इस तरह से जो सारी रेडिएशन वो रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं होती बल्कि यहाँ रह जाती है एटमॉस्फेयर में, जिससे कि टेम्परेचर मेंटेन रहता है अर्थ का। तो ये है सम इज एब्जॉर्ब एंड री इमिटेड बाई CO2 इन द एटमॉस्फेयर। दिस इज ब्लैक से जो दिया है वो दिखाया हुआ है वो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड मॉलिक्यूल्स हैं। और ऊपर यहाँ सनलाइट, इनकमिंग सनलाइट एंड रेडिएशन इमिटेड बाय द अर्थ। तो कुछ तो इमिट हो जाती है लेकिन बाकी कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड गैस से रोक ली जाती है। द रोल ऑफ एटमॉस्फेरिक CO2 इन द ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट, ये यहाँ दिखाया गया है। कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड इज ट्रांसपेरेंट टू कमिंग सनलाइट बट इट एब्जॉर्ब एंड री इमिट्स ए significant amount of the infrared radiation emitted by the earth. This alters the earth's energy balance, raising it as एवरेज टेम्परेचर, यानी टेम्परेचर जो नॉर्मल टेम्परेचर होना चाहिए अर्थ का वो मेंटेन रहता है। Radiations are absorbed by the earth and as a result the continents and oceans are warmed. Warm bodies emit radiation and the earth is no exception. Most of the radiations emitted by the earth lies in the infrared region. The rate at which energy escapes the surface of the earth is over twice the rate at which the planet directly absorbs energy from the sun. This means that the earth acts as a little like an extravagant person. If this process were the only one to be occurring, the earth would be a very cold place. Fortunately, the planet does something extra to maintain the heat balance. Almost 84% of the heat radiated by the earth is absorbed by gases in the atmosphere and re-radiated back to the earth's surface. As a result of this exchange, the total energy input from the sun balance the energy output from the earth. A steady state is established with more or less constant average terrestrial temperature. Now it is the return of 84% of the energy radiated from the surface of the earth that has been termed the global greenhouse effect. The constituents of the atmospheric greenhouse are made of molecules that are transparent to visible light but absorb in the infrared region. Nitrogen and oxygen, the major component of the atmosphere, are transparent to infrared radiations. However, some tracer gases in the tropospheres are strong infrared radiation absorber. These gases are carbon dioxide, water vapors, methane, ozone, chlorofluorocarbons, etc. These gases are transparent to sunlight, absorb infrared radiations emitted by the earth and re-emit still longer wavelength infrared radiation, most of which return to the Earth's surface where they are reabsorbed. This process keeps the temperature from falling dramatically at night when the ground is no longer absorbing energy from the sun. Now, what are the greenhouse gases? This is क्लियर हो चुका है ये, लेकिन फिर हम एक बार इसको रिपीट करेंगे। what are the greenhouse gases? The gases which are transparent to sunlight and are capable of absorbing infrared radiations and then re-emitting infrared radiations of longer wavelengths are termed greenhouse gases. Upon receiving a photon in the infrared region, a carbon dioxide or H2O molecule is promoted to higher vibrational energy level. When it absorbed light or photon having energy h nu, it converted into activated, excited CO2 and H2O molecules. The energetically excited molecules of CO2 and H2O lose their excess energy either by collision with other molecules or by spontaneous emission of radiation. Part of this radiation is emitted to outer space and the rest returns to the Earth's surface, keeping it comparatively warmer. The degree of temperature control depends on the amount of carbon dioxide and water vapor in the atmosphere. In desert region where the amount of water is very low and at high altitude where the atmosphere is less dense, day and night temperature variations are much more severe than a lower altitude having humidity. If it were not for presence of these two relatively minor component of the atmosphere, that is CO2 and H2O, the earth would be essentially barren of life. Its mean temperature would have been about minus 15 degrees centigrade, roughly 35 degrees centigrade, lower than is today, what it is today. In this way, it can be said that CO2 and H2O vapors act as an insulating blankets to prevent heat from escaping to outer space. So this is the explanation of greenhouse effect. Now come on the global warming. What is global warming? Whereas the total amount of water vapors in our atmosphere has not altered noticeably over the years, the carbon dioxide concentration have risen by about 25% in the past century. This increase is as a result of extra burning of fossil fuels, that is petroleum, natural gas, and coal, in order to meet the energy level. Now, this is the figure shows the increase in CO2 level, concentration ppm in volumes, ये दिया हुआ है और इधर नीचे ये पूरा डायग्राम है. कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड लेवल 1958 टू 1992 के बीच जिस तरह से ये कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का लेवल एटमॉस्फेयर में इंक्रीज करता गया, वो इस डायग्राम में दिखाया है इस तरह से. Now concentration from the year 1958 to year 1992 is from 310 ppm to 360. यहाँ पे डायग्राम में देख सकते हो 360 पहुंच गया लास्ट ईयर, जो जहाँ पे कैलकुलेट किया गया है ये. और स्टार्टिंग कहाँ थी सबसे पहले इन 1958 कितना था ये 320 और 310 ppm. Other measurements indicate that during the past nearly 120 years, the average temperature of the planet has increased by somewhere between zero point 0.4 and zero point 0.8 degrees centigrade. Current estimates are that doubling the CO2 concentration will result in a temperature increase of between 1 to 3.5 degrees centigrade. Recent estimates suggest that about half of the global warming may be attributable to compounds other than carbon dioxide. The relative contribution of various gases to the greenhouse effect is CO2 is 50%, while the contribution of other trace gases is also about 50%. The amount of warming which a greenhouse gas imparts. The amount of warming which a greenhouse gas imparts to square meter of the earth is called radiative forcing. The radiative forcing exerted by each greenhouse gas depend on its concentration and its ability to absorb long wavelength IR radiation. The effectiveness is quantified by the, now this is the diagram, 50% of CO2 and Rest 50% includes H2O2% and 2O4%, O2 8%, CH4 19%, and fluorocarbon 17%. This is the relative contribution of radiatively active gases to greenhouse effect, which is explained here. The contribution of CO2 is 50%, contribution of other trace gases is about 50%, and the amount of warming which a greenhouse gas imparts to a square meter of the earth is called radiative forcing. The effectiveness is quantified by the greenhouse factor, a number that represents the relative contribution of a molecule of the gas to global warming. Values of the greenhouse factor for 6 common trace gases and their average concentration in the troposphere are given in the following table. Greenhouse factor, tropospheric abundance, and name of the gas. CO2, greenhouse factor 1 assigned value है ये सारी, and tropospheric abundance 3.6 into 10 to the power minus 2, CH4 30 and 1.7 into 3rd to the power minus 3, N2O 160 greenhouse factor and abundance at 3 into 10 to the power minus 4, H2O minus 1 and 1, O3 2000 and abundance 4 into 10 to the power minus 6, and chlorofluorocarbon 25,000 and abundance in percent 4.8 into 10 to the power minus 8. According to the value given in the table, it is clear that one molecule of CF2Cl2 has the same global warming effect as 25,000 CO2 molecules. Fortunately, the tropospheric abundance of most highly effective absorbers of air is very low. Now, consequences of global warming. Global warming would have the following effects. First, rise in the sea level. Although the temperature increase of 1 to 3% may seem insignificant, it is actually large enough to disrupt the delicate thermal balance on the earth and could cause glaciers and ice caps to melt. Consequently, the sea level would increase. It has been estimated that the sea level may rise 0.5 to 1.5 m in the next 50 to 100 years. Higher sea level would. The second effect in it increase the frequency and severity of floods. And third point is damaged coastal areas, that is low-lying areas, would submerge. Causes loss of soil replenishment. Now see again. It has been estimated the sea level may rise 0.5 to 1.5 meter in the next 50 to 100 years. Higher sea level would increase the frequency and severity of the floods. Damaged coastal area, that is low-lying area, would submerge, causes loss of soil replenishment, and cause seawater intrusion into river and other aquatic systems near the oceans. One-third population of the world lives in low-lying areas near the coast. A large part of the population of some countries is at risk if sea level rises substantially. The second effect, evaporation of water from aquatic system. Global warming will cause more water to evaporate from aquatic system and increase the concentration of water vapor in the atmosphere. The extra water vapors will amplify warming because water vapors itself is a greenhouse gas. The third effect of global warming is changing patterns of rainfall. Patterns of rainfall would change worldwide, causing large shift in agriculturally productive areas. The fourth effect is effect on plants. Most plants record an increase in photosynthesis only initially when the concentration of CO2 is high. But this trend tends to fall with time. It has been observed that plants grown in higher concentration of CO2 have less nitrogen and more carbon content. The dead materials of such plants do not provide nitrogen based nutrients to plants and therefore fail to increase soil fertility. Due to increase in temperature, the moisture content of soil would decrease and thus reducing the fertility of the soil. Now, effect on human health and wildlife. An increase in global temperature is likely to increase the occurrence of infectious disease such as malaria, dengue, yellow fever, sleeping sickness, etc. Likewise, the population of mosquitoes, flies, snails will increase, and these can be responsible for the outbreak of cholera, pneumonia, plague, etc. Greenhouse effect shall seriously disturb wildlife. With every rise of 1 degree centigrade temperature, plant and tree species will have to move 90-kilometer polewards to survive. As trees and plants die out and habitat disappear, so will the animals that depends on them. Now, step to minimize greenhouse effect. To combat greenhouse effect, the emission of carbon dioxide must be reduced. This can be done by improving energy efficiency in automobiles, household heating and lighting, non-fossil fuel energy sources such as solar energy, wind energy, photovoltaic cells, etc. should be encouraged. Worldwide, one third of all carbon dioxide emissions come from thermal electric generating plants. This carbon dioxide can be injected into the ocean at depth below 500 meters so that its chance of being released to the atmosphere are almost negligible. Recently, a process has been devised to convert CO2 into fuel. It has been found that CO2 reacts with water at 50 degrees centigrade in presence of TiO2 as a catalyst and ultraviolet light to give methane, hydrogen, and carbon monoxide. All of these products can be used as a fuel. The and second method for this, the production and use of chlorofluorocarbon must be banned. The production of use of chlorofluorocarbons must be banned. The phasing out of chlorofluorocarbon will help to slow down the warming effect. Other effects such as recovery of methane gas generated at landfills and the reduction of natural gas leakage should be made. There should be a global effort to prevent the massive deforestation. Vegetation plays a vital role in maintaining the steady state concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Converting the forest to farmlands for crops and grasslands for cattle may do irreparable damage to the delicate ecosystem and permanently alter the climate pattern on the earth. Thus, deforestation can be reduced by preserving the existing forest and growing more trees. The fifth method is the world's population, which at present is increasing at an alarming rate, must be established. Many of our environmental problems are related to the expanding human population. The check on population is essential to stabilize the atmospheric burden of greenhouse gases. Now, the topic of today's class is the ozone layer and its depletion. Ozone layer and its depletion. This is the stratospheric pollution. The ozone layer in the stratosphere is a natural feature of the Earth's environment. This layer exists between 20 and 35 kilometers above the Earth's surface. The layer shields the Earth from the harmful ultraviolet radiation of the sun. In recent years, however, human activities have disturbed the ozone layer through an increase in the global concentration of some atmospheric chemicals. A depletion of ozone layer is considered as a serious threat to all forms of life. A 5% decrease in ozone concentration could increase the incidence of skin cancer by 20%. Ultraviolet radiation is also a factor in disease of the eye, including cataract formation. It can cause genetic mutations and destroy crops and other forms of vegetation. The ultraviolet radiation between 180 nm to 360 nm, that is nanometer, coming from the sun are prevented by the ozone layer to reach the earth surface. A photon with wavelength between 180 and 240 nm breaks the O2 molecules into two atoms of oxygen. O2 reacts with photon of wavelength 180 to 240 nm. It converts into atoms of oxygen. A oxygen molecule capture one of these oxygen atoms to form ozone molecules. Plus heat generated, heat is absorbed. Here heat is absorbed. The second step occurs twice for each O2 fragmentation, giving overall balanced process of ozone formation. इस तरह से. Now here absorb O2 and forms ozone. The production of ozone is required both as source of oxygen atoms and frequent collision between the atoms and the molecule that make up the atmosphere. A high fraction of the atmosphere is oxygen atoms at high altitude, but not enough collision occur to form ozone in significant amount. This is because at this altitude, the pressure, the molecular density, and the rate of molecular collision are very low. Below 20 kilometer, on the other hand, all the light energetic enough to split oxygen molecule into oxygen atoms has already been absorbed. Consequently, below this altitude, insufficient oxygen atoms are present to generate ozone. Therefore, the ozone layer is between 20 kilometer and 35 kilometer above the Earth's surface. The formation of O3 goes on continuously, but O3 the formation of O3 goes on continuously, but O3 is also decomposed by ultraviolet radiation between 240 and 360 nanometer. O3 decomposed with this wavelength of light to decomposes O2 plus O. The O atom can react with second O3 molecule to form oxygen. Like this O plus O3 to O2 and 2O3 converted into 3O2. Short wavelength ultraviolet forms O3, whereas long wavelength ultraviolet decomposes O3. The radiations, थोड़ा इसको, the reactions form a delicate balance in which the rate of O3 decomposition matches the rate of O3 formation. That is, a dynamic equilibrium exists and maintain a constant concentration of O3. Thus, the ozone layer absorbs nearly all the solar photons in the range 180 to 360 nm, that is 90 to 95% energetic ultraviolet radiations, and protect life on the earth. Now, ozone depletion, वो सारा किस तरह से ओजोन लेयर प्रोटेक्ट करती है जो सरफेस ऑफ अर्थ को, वो सारी क्लियर हुई। उसके बाद अब आते हैं हम ओजोन डिप्लेशन पे। There has been much hue and cry about the destruction of stratospheric ozone, and the issue has assumed global dimensions. Two scientists who first suggested in 1974 that chlorofluorocarbons could deplete the ozone layer. F. Sherwood Rowland and Mario Molina won the 1995 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, along with Paul Crutzen, who suggested that oxides of nitrogen in atmosphere could catalyze the decomposition of ozone. Ozone depletion by oxides of nitrogen. First reason of the depletion of ozone. Over the past few years, the concentration of nitrous oxide has increased considerably in the atmosphere. This has been attributed to large-scale combustion of fossil fuels and enhanced use of nitrogen fertilizers. Nitrous oxide and other oxides of nitrogen are also emitted by supersonic transport aircraft. Though nitrous oxide is quite inert in the stratosphere, it is photochemically converted into more reactive nitric oxide. Reacts with light to form nitric oxide and nascent nitrogen. The nitric oxide so formed that undergoes the following chain reaction. NO reacts with O3 to form NO2, and O3 is converted into O2. This O3 reacts with light to form O2 plus O, and this O react with NO2 to form NO plus O2. The net reaction, O3 is converted completely into oxygen, 2O2 plus H2, 3O2. Thus, in presence of oxides of nitrogen in the stratosphere, the decomposition rate of O3 increases. The second reason for the ozone depletion by chlorofluorocarbon. Since the mid 1970s, scientists have been concerned about the harmful effect of certain chlorofluorocarbon on ozone layer. The chlorofluorocarbon, which are generally called by the trade name freons, were first synthesized in 1930. Some of the common ones are freon 11, freon 12, these are the formulas, and this is C2H3Cl3 freon 113, and this is freon 114. Because these compounds are readily liquefied, relatively inert, non-toxic, non-combustible, and volatile, they have been used as coolant in refrigerators and air conditioners. Large quantities of chlorofluorocarbon are also used in the manufacture of disposable foam products such as cups, plates, propellants, and as solvent to clean newly soldered electronic circuit. Most of the chlorofluorocarbon used for the commercial and industrial purpose are eventually discharged into the atmosphere because chlorofluorocarbon are highly resistant to chemical attack. They are very stable in the lower atmosphere where they can exist for up to 100 years. This stability gives chlorofluorocarbons time to diffuse up through the troposphere into the stratosphere. Their chlorofluorocarbon absorb wavelength between 170 nanometer and 220 nanometer that break carbon chlorine bonds and produce chlorine atoms. If these are reacts with the light, in presence of light, converted into CF to Cl and gives chlorine atoms. The reactive chlorine atom then undergo the following reaction. Cl reacts with ozone to form ClO and O3. O2, Cl plus O3 forms ClO plus O2 and ClO reacts with O to form Cl and O2. Overall reaction हो जाएगा O3 plus O in presence of Cl. It means O3 converted into O2. The oxygen atoms in equation are provided by the photochemical decomposition of molecular oxygen and ozone. In this mechanism, chlorine atoms catalyze ozone decomposition. Here, one chlorine atoms can destroy up to 1 lakh ozone molecules before it is removed by some other reaction. The above mechanism for the destruction of O3 has been supported by the detection of ClO in the stratosphere in the recent years. The catalyzed decomposition of ozone is known to responsible for the ozone hole that develops in Antarctica each year in September and October at the end of in winter in the southern hemisphere. No ozone is generated during the long, dark Antarctic winter. Meanwhile, a heterogeneous reactions occurring on clouds of ice crystal at minus 85 degrees centigrade produces species such as Cl2, Br2, and HOCl. Here, ClO reacts with Na2 to form ClONO2 and Cl reacts with methane to form active methane plus HCl, and this reacts with water to form HOCl and HNO3, and this is hypochlorous acid, and this also reacts with HCl, which produce here to form HNO3 and chlorine. These are the reactions. When the sun reappears in September, these molecules decompose photochemically to form chlorine and bromine atoms like this. The reactive chlorine atoms are thus rendered free to deplete ozone. Ozone depletion is by no means restricted to the southern hemisphere. In the extremely cold winter of 1994 to 1995, a similar ozone hole was found in the Arctic. Beyond that, the concentration of ozone in the atmosphere over parts of Siberia dropped by 40%. In 1987, an international treaty was signed in Montreal to cut back in the use of chlorofluorocarbon. Production of freon in the United States was stopped in 1996. If all the nations comply with the agreement, the amount of chlorofluorocarbon, which was at the maximum level around the year 2000, will be slowly declining over the present century. An intense effort is underway to find substitutes that are not harmful to the ozone layer. One of the promising substances is hydrochlorofluorocarbon, that is CF3CHCl2. This is hydrochlorofluorocarbon 123. The presence of hydrogen atom makes the compound more susceptible to oxidation in the lower atmosphere so that it never reaches the stratosphere. Unfortunately, the same hydrogen atom also makes the compound more active biologically than chlorofluorocarbon. It can cause tumor in rats, although now, effect of depletion of the ozone layer. Depletion of ozone layer is a serious threat to mankind on account of low concentration of ozone in the stratosphere. More ultraviolet radiation enters into tropospheres. Ultraviolet radiations lead to aging of skin, cataract or blindness, sunburn, skin cancer, etc. Ultraviolet radiation can damage the immune system, which may lead to increased viral infections. Second, ultraviolet radiation damage the plant proteins and chlorophyll. This leads to harmful mutation of cells. It also increases evaporation of surface water through the stomata of leaves and decrease moisture contents of soil. Now, aquatic animals and aquatic plants are greatly affected by ultraviolet radiations. Excessive exposure to radiations may kill many phytoplanktons, and damage the fish productivity. The ozone depletion has a very strong effect on climate and ecology. Ultraviolet radiation damage paints, fibers, etc. Now, global warming and ozone depletion. Global warming and ozone depletion are important environmental issues that involve the atmosphere. There are enough difference between the two phenomena which have been tabulated ahead. Now, global warming and ozone depletion, comparison between this reason of atmosphere involved in for global warming, mostly troposphere, and ozone depletion occurs in stratosphere. Second point, major substance involved is CO2, CH4, H2O, and N2O in global warming, and in ozone depletion, O2, O3, and chlorofluorocarbon. Interaction with radiations in global warming, IR radiations absorbed by molecules which vibrate and re-emit energy to the earth. In ozone depletion, ultraviolet radiation absorbed by molecules which are dissociated into smaller fragments. In global warming, nature of problem, increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases are apparently increasing average global temperature. In depletion, ozone depletion, decreasing concentration of O3 is apparently increasing exposure to ultraviolet radiation. Now, source of problem in global warming, release of CO2 from burning fossil fuels and deforestation. And for the case of ozone replication, this is release of CFCs. Now, source of problem in global warming, release of CO2 from burning fossil fuel and deforestation, and in ozone depletion, release of chlorofluorocarbon. Now, possible consequence For global warming, climate change, increase in sea level, change in agriculture productivity, while in ozone depletion, skin and eye disease, growth of plants affected. Now, possible responses in global warming, check deforestation and less use of fossil fuel. And for the ozone depletion, production and use of chlorofluorocarbon be completely stopped. Now, green chemistry as an alternative tool for reducing pollution. The green chemistry is a very important topic in the environmental chemistry. Over the past decade, an important initiative known as green chemistry, the use of chemistry to prevent pollution, has been taken. Green chemistry can be defined as the design, development, and implementation of chemical products and processes to reduce or eliminate the use and generation of substance hazardous to human health and environment. This is the green chemistry. Green chemistry reduce pollution through fundamental breakthroughs in designing and redesigning chemical processes with an eye towards making them environmentally friendly. That's begin and design. In this regard, Dr. Barry Frost advocates an atom economy approach to the synthesis of commercial chemical products such as pharma cuticle plastics and pesticides. Such synthesis would be designed so that all reactant atoms end up as desired products and not as wasteful byproduct. This approach would have saved money as well as materials, and undesired products would not be produced at waste which required disposal. The reason green chemistry is being adopted to rapidly around the world because it is pathway to ensuring economic and environmental prosperity. The main objectives of green chemistry can be summarized in the following points. First, it is better to prevent waste than to treat or clean up waste after it has been created. Second point is synthetic methods should be designed to maximize the incorporation of all materials used in the process into the final product. Third, whenever practicable, synthetic methods should be designed to use and generate substance that possess little or no toxicity to human health and environment. The fourth method, chemical products should be designed to affect their desired function while minimizing their toxicity. And the fifth, the use of auxiliary substance should be made unnecessary where possible and in, innocuous when used. Sixth point is energy requirement of chemical processes should be recognized for their environmental and economical impacts and should be minimized. If possible, synthetic products should be conducted at ambient temperature and pressure. Uh, Another point is raw material or feed stock should be renewable rather than depleting, whereas technically and economically practicable. Unnecessary derivatization should be minimized or avoided if possible because such steps require addition, additional reagents and can generate waste. Another point is catalytic agents as selective as possible should be used, and chemical products should be designed so that at the end of their function they break down into incautious innocuous degradation products and do not persist in the environment. And the substance and the form of substance used in the chemical process should be chosen to minimize the potential for chemical accidents, including release, explosion, and fires. Innovative green chemical method already have made an impact on wide variety of chemical manufacturing process by decreasing or eliminating the use of creation of toxic substance. For example, cheaper, less wasteful and less toxic methods have been developed to produce ibuprofen, pesticide, new materials for disposable disappears and contact lens, new dry cleaning methods, and recycled silicon wafer for integrated circuits. Some examples of green chemistry are halogens are greenhouse gas compounds composed of carbon, fluorine, and bromine. These are used in firefighting and other applications. Using a green chemistry approach, pyropole technologies have synthesized a halon institutes. The product called pyrocoal is an environmentally vegan foam that is more effective than halogens in firefighting. Even large scale fires such as those on oil tankers and jet airplanes can be extinguished in a short time. Now, chlorofluorocarbons have been in use in refrigerators and air conditioning plants. However, these compounds have been found to be unfriendly to environment. These compounds are responsible for depletion of ozone layer in the stratosphere and for global warming. Substitutes to these compounds such as HFC 134A have been discovered which are considered to be more friendly to environment. Third point is the solvent used to dry clean cloths are usually chlorinated compounds such as tetrachloroethylene C2Cl4, which is a potential human carcinogen. These materials also have serious environmental consequences. Dr. Gio Desimone had discovered a substitute for the chlorinated compound by synthesizing cleaning detergent that work in liquid carbon dioxide. The detergent are such that one end of the molecule is soluble in nonpolar substance like grease and oil stains while the other end dissolved in liquid CO2. The breakthrough process is paving the way for designing replacement for conventional halogenated solvents currently used in manufacturing and is industries making coating. Switching from air to pure oxygen eliminates NO2 production and also see fuel by more efficient burning. This has been achieved by glass manufacturer in US. Scientists are engineering biodegradability into some synthetic polymers. Certain bonds or groups are introduced into the molecule to make them susceptible to fungal or bacterial attack or to decomposition by moisture. Recently, a biodegradable polymers called biomass has been developed which decomposes in about 8 weeks in a landfill. Biomass could be used in the variety of applications such as law bags, bottles, liners, diapers, disposable eating utensil, and cups. The current commercial method for producing ibuprofen is stunning application of green chemistry. Conventional method for ibuprofen production requires 6 steps. Use large amount of solvent and generated significant quantities of waste. By using a catalyst that also serve as a solvent, BHC company had discovered a method of ibuprofen production in just 3 steps with minimum of solvent and waste. Urea is a major fertilizer used worldwide. It provides nitrogen to soil by decomposing to ammonia and carbon dioxide. When acted on by urease, an enzyme in soils, the ammonia is then taken up by the plants. Reaction is urea plus H2O in urease की presence में ये NH3 और CO2 में convert हो जाता है. However, the efficiency of urea as a fertilizer is reduced because of 30% ammonia is lost by evaporation before it can be taken up the plant roots. To overcome this loss, a formation named agrotrains has been developed which act as urease inhibitor. This formulation reduces the rate at which urease decomposes urea so that ammonia is released more slowly and efficiently. Now, green chemistry. ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री की के जो मेन फीचर थे वो पढ़ा. अब ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री हमें क्या करने के लिए कहती है, इसका एक शॉर्ट फॉर्म में यहाँ पे हमने दिया है, डिस्क्रिप्शन है इसका. ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री, एवरीवन डूइंग इट. The 12 principles of green chemistry, a framework for designing or improving materials, products, process and symptoms. वन बाय वन इधर से हम देखते हैं. प्रिवेंट, जो 12 प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री इज हियर. प्रिवेंट वेस्ट, एटम इकोनॉमी, लेस हेजार्डस सिंथेसिस, सारी चीजें हम डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. डिजाइन बिगिन बैनिंग केमिकल्स, बैनिंग सॉल्वेंट्स एंड ऑक्सीलरीज, design for energy efficiency, use of renewable feedstocks, reduce derivatives, catalysis, design for degradation, real-time analysis for pollution prevention, and inherently begins chemistry for accident prevention. Now here green chemistry is, what is this? A new kind of chemistry is known as green chemistry. Green chemistry is based on a set of principles that when used in the design, development and implementation of chemical products and process enable scientists to protect and benefit the economy, people and the planets. Green chemistry uses renewable biodegradable materials which do not persist in the environment. And green chemistry is used catalysis and biocatalysis to improve efficiency and conduct reactions at low or ambient temperature. Green chemistry is a proven system approach. Green chemistry reduces the use and generation of hazardous substance, and green chemistry offers strategic pathway to build a sustainable future. द 12 प्रिंसिपल जो अभी बताया वो यहाँ पे इस तरह से डायग्रामेट्रिकली दिखाया हुआ है. फर्स्ट, वेस्ट प्रिवेंशन. सेकंड, एटम इकोनॉमी. ये सारी चीजें हम डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. थर्ड है लेस हैजार्डस केमिकल सिंथेसिस. फोर्थ है डिजाइनिंग सेफर केमिकल्स. फिफ्थ, सेफर सॉल्वेंट. उसके बाद 6 पॉइंट है डिजाइन फॉर एनर्जी इफिशियंसी. And 7 point is here. Use of renewable feedstocks, reduce derivatives, 9 catalysis, design for degradation, and 11 real-time pollution prevention, prevention, and 12 point is safer chemistry for accident prevention. तो ये सारे ये चार्ट जो है ये शॉर्ट पे तुम्हें ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री के बारे में बता रहा है. दिस इज ए वेरी important and useful and recent branch of chemistry, जिससे जो है बहुत से इम्प्रूवमेंट जो पॉल्यूशन है और जो हार्मफुल इफेक्ट होते हैं तमाम मेथड साइंस के जो केमिस्ट्री यूज़ किए जाते हैं उसको उसको प्रिवेंट करने के लिए ग्रीन केमिस्ट्री ने जो पॉइंट्स दिए हैं वो बहुत ही इम्पॉर्टेंट है. तो आज का तुम्हारा बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक थे सारे जितने इसमें डिस्कस हुए हैं, और उम्मीद है कि अच्छी नॉलेज आज की क्लास से मिली होगी. अब इसके बाद हम वो एयर पॉल्यूशन से रिलेटेड सारी चीज़ें ये थी जो है, अब हम दूसरे पॉल्यूशन जैसे वाटर पॉल्यूशन है, सॉइल पॉल्यूशन, रेडियो एक्टिव पॉल्यूशन, इस तरह के पॉल्यूशन पे हम आगे की क्लासों में डिस्कस करेंगे.